Well, we've been working on the book of Proverbs and looking at what Solomon has to say about wisdom. And if you remember, we defined wisdom as skillful living life skillfully and effectively and in a way that is productive and God-honoring. Well, a couple weeks ago, I began the sermon by asking the question, what does wisdom look like? And someone, I don't remember who it was, said gray hair. And that there's a lot of truth to that. But if you think about that, also, I think sometimes wisdom comes from places that aren't necessarily expected. You've heard the statement, out of the mouth of babes. And so sometimes we need to listen to our children because there's a lot of wisdom they have to share with us. Let me give you some examples. This is Patrick, age 10. Never trust a dog to watch your food. Michael, age 14, said, when your dad is mad and asks you, do I look stupid? Don't answer him. Michael, no age given, says, never tell your mom her diet's not working. Kiyoyo, age 9, never hold a dust buster and the cat at the same time. Naomi, age 15, said, if you want a kitten, start out by asking for a horse. Lauren, age 9, said, felt markers are not good to use as lipstick. Joel, 10 years old, said, don't pick on your sister when she's holding a baseball bat. And finally, Eileen, age 8, says, never try to baptize a cat. So sometimes wisdom comes to us from a lot of different places. And if you think about it, most wisdom comes to us through experience, right? I would imagine every one of those kids learned something, learned those bits of wisdom by their experience. Well, we're coming to the last couple chapters that we're going to look at entirety in Proverbs. Solomon has kind of been laying out a foundation of what wisdom looks like. And in chapter 8 and 9, he's going to talk about wisdom and folly and the way they call to us and they invite us. And chapter 8, we're going to look at wisdom. And I've entitled this, Wisdom is Easy to Find. You know, a lot of times in our world, we picture people looking for wisdom, and it's often portrayed by a guy out having to climb a big mountain like this, looking for some wise, enlightened guru sitting on top of a mountain who is the fountain of all wisdom and knowledge. But if we look at what Solomon has to say to us in chapter 8, we're going to discover that it's not all that hard to find. That it's readily available to anybody who will listen, anybody who's looking, anyone who is able to recognize can find her. And so I want to dig into chapter 8. I know there's a lot of verses here. We're not going to go into a lot of depth on the whole chapter, but I just want to point out some things that make wisdom easy to find. And I want to start by noting wisdom's closeness. Listen as Solomon writes these words, does wisdom not call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights along the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gates leading into the city, at the entrances she cries aloud. To you, O men, I call out, I raise my voice to all mankind. You who are simple gain prudence, you who are foolish gain understanding. If you look at that passage, it's pretty easy to see that Solomon says when it comes to wisdom, where is she? She is everywhere. You know, to say wisdom is hard to find would be like going out in the ocean and saying, where's the water? Or standing in the sand dunes at Florence and saying, I don't see any sand. There are a lot of people, and I think I have a picture here. A lot of people who see wisdom kind of like that. How many of you have done the Where's Waldo puzzles? You know, the Where's Waldo puzzles, you have to look through and this is a simple one, but some of them you have to look for one little guy wearing a weird little costumes in the picture. And some people see wisdom like that. We have to search for it and try to find it, but this is the way Solomon portrays it. If we don't find wisdom, it's because we're not looking for it, because we're not paying attention, because wisdom is everywhere. Wisdom is not whispering. Notice, doesn't she call out? Doesn't understanding call out? Doesn't she raise her voice? Now, anybody have a mother that ever raised her voice and called out to you? Did anybody not ever recognize their mother's voice? Anybody ever say, I just didn't hear you? Not in my life. You know, I think when it comes down to it, I'm going to say this again later, but when it comes to wisdom, it's not so much cannot as will not. It's not so much that I don't know where to look, is that I don't want to look. I don't like what I'm hearing, so I don't pay attention. But let's go back, because I want us to look at what he has to say. It's all around us. She's on the heights, the high point of the city. That's the highest point. She's not obscure. She's not hiding. She's at a place where her voice can be heard clearly, and she can be seen. She's at the paths. Literally, that word path means intersection, crossroads. At the gates of the city. If you think about the biblical concept of the gate of the city, it's the place where commerce was conducted, a place where justice was administered, and a place with social interaction. A place, and also at the entrances. How many entrances do you encounter in a day of your life? You have the entrance to your home, entrance to your work, you have the entrance to, the school, you have the entrance to restaurants, you have we could go on and on and on. There are a lot of entrances, and Solomon is basically saying, anywhere men might need guidance and counsel and advice and instruction, wisdom is there if we're willing to listen. It's all around us. Wisdom is available. And she's speaking to all men. Notice she says the simple. And anybody remember who a simple person is other than a preacher? Simple person is that naive person, a person who hasn't been educated, who doesn't know. And so she says, listen to me, you who are simple, and gain wisdom. Those of you and what's a fool? Anybody who doesn't want to hear what God has to say. Psalm says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. He's the one who doesn't want instruction. He thinks he has it all figured out, and he knows everything, and so he's not going to listen. So she says, I'm speaking to everybody, the simple and the fool, because I'm the key to finding success and effectiveness in life. Wisdom isn't hard to find because she is all around us. She is always speaking to us. But second of all, since she's all around us, how do we recognize her? And I think Solomon identifies something. He starts by describing her character. Let's pick up with verse 6. Listen, for I have worthy things to say. I open my lips to speak what is right. My mouth speaks what, for my lips detest. All the words of my mouth are just. None of them is crooked or perverse. To the discerning, all of them are right. They are faultless to those who have knowledge. Silver, knowledge rather than is more precious than rubies, and nothing you can desire, or you desire, can compare with her. What's the character of wisdom? How do you know it? First, she says, I have worthy things to say. If you take that word and look it up, it will tell you that it literally could be translated noble or excellent. Noble or excellent things. What's the quality of the language used by wisdom? Philippians 4:8, Paul he describes it in this way. He says, whatever things are excellent, whatever things are praiseworthy, whatever things are admirable. And he makes a whole list of things that comprise positive, encouraging, and uplifting conversation and thoughts. Now, we may all have different lists, but I would almost guarantee that every one of us know noble and excellent language when we hear it. You notice the things she says it's not in her vocabulary or in her conversation. She says, what I say is right. What I say is true. What I say is not wickedness, for I detest wickedness. What I say is just. And just is giving man their due, based on what God's righteousness said. None of my words are crooked or perverse. You want to know the wisdom level of an individual? Listen to their language. Crooked and perverse, liar, doesn't fit with the concept of wisdom. Wisdom is around us. Listen of what she has to say, noble things, worthy things. She's known by the company she keeps. Go on to let me back up for just one more thing I wanted to point out. Her character, down in verse 10 and 11, he says, choose wisdom, or choose instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you can desire can compare with her. If I had a stack of $1 million up here and wisdom over here, and you could choose whichever one you want, the one you chose would say much about you. Between those two options, what does Solomon say to pursue? Wisdom. How much time do we invest in trying to accumulate this in our lives compared with the amount of time we spend trying to attain wisdom? Understanding about how to live life. You see, this one endures. And we're going to see in a little bit about the fact that how when we possess that, the wealth and riches become ours. Not necessarily physical, but she does things for us. But if it's a choice between money or wisdom, choose wisdom. That's Solomon's estimation. He goes on to say, we know wisdom by her conduct. I, wisdom, verse 12, dwell together with prudence. I possess knowledge and discretion. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior and perverse speech. Counsel and sound judgment are mine. I have understanding and power. By me kings reign and rulers make laws that are just. By me princes govern and all nobles who rule on earth. I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit is better than fine gold. What I yield surpasses choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice, bestowing wealth on those who love me and making their treasuries full. What's her conduct? Well, look at the company she keeps. Prudence. Chances are most of us don't know anybody named Prudence. Used to be. But prudence. What is prudence? What is a prudent individual? Someone who knows the right thing to do at the right time and the right way. It can be almost any area of life. How many of you have said, or heard somebody say at some point in life, you have the option, but the prudent thing to do would be to, and this was always seemed to be my mom's counsel in regards to money. You could go buy that thing, you could do this with it, but the prudent thing to do would be to put it in the bank. Prudent, doing the right thing, right time and the right way. She says, I live in company with them. She also possesses knowledge. Now, let's get something straight. Wisdom does not necessarily equal knowledge, and knowledge does not necessarily equal wisdom. I have known some highly educated, very intelligent, very knowledgeable people in my life. But as they say in the South, who didn't have the sense God gave a stone. There's a lot of people who have this, but they don't know how to use it. Wisdom is the ability to take what I know and put it into practice in a practical way. Wisdom tells me how to use the knowledge I possess. Discretion. Discretion is, again, kind of related back to prudence, a sense of timing, knowing when to do what and what not to do. Most of you are exercising discretion by not standing up and making a scene while I'm preaching and making fun of me. We use discretion by measuring what we say and when we say it. Jesus used discretion. How many times did Jesus walk away from situations that could have been the end of him because of discretion? She says, I possess the fear of the Lord. At the beginning of the message series, we talked about what the fear of the Lord was. Fear of the Lord is this: I care, most of all, what God says about a given subject or situation. I want to know what He has to say. The fear of the Lord is, when it comes to my money, I want to know what He wants. When it comes to my family, I want to know what He has to say. A fool is someone who doesn't care and therefore doesn't fear God. Wisdom says, I possess the fear of the Lord, and because of that, she says, I hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance. I hate evil behavior and perverse speech. Just as we listen for the language, look at the things that they involve themselves in. Look at the things they pursue. Counsel and sound judgment are mine, and I have understanding and power. The things she possesses and the things she does. A lot of thoughts went through my mind as I read verses 15 and 16. By me kings reign and rulers make laws that are just. By me princes govern and all nobles who rule on earth. You want to know wisdom? Watch how your government makes decisions. In those moments when they make laws that are right and just and true, they are manifesting the wisdom of God. Now, I know those are becoming more and more rare. But even an ungodly ruler, from time to time, manifests wisdom by the decisions they make. It's by me that just laws are passed and conducted. She says she loves those who love her, and those who seek me find me. Why do you seek wisdom? Because you want to know. Jesus said, if you seek, you will find. James 1 says, he who lacks wisdom, let us ask God, and He will give without limit. And then he says, with me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. They're That's what we want, right? But it's not necessarily physical. Matthew 6:19 through 21, Jesus said, don't lay up treasures for yourself here on earth, because those tangible things disappear. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. The treasure and wealth that wisdom bestows upon you cannot be measured in dollars and cents. They can't be measured in acres of land. They can't be measured in houses or cars, because they are spiritual and intangible. And they come from walking in the way of righteousness. Wisdom walks in the way of righteousness, along the paths of justice, and bestows wealth on those who seek her. Third thing he says, tells us about his wisdom's creation. Read verses 22 through 31 with me. The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works, before his deeds of old. It was appointed from eternity, from the beginning, before the world began. When there were no oceans, I was given birth. When there were no springs abounding with water, before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills I was given birth, before he made the earth or its fields or any of the dust of the world. I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above the fixed securely the fountains of the deep, when he gave the sea its boundary so the waters would not overstep his command, and when he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was the craftsman at his side. I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in his presence, rejoicing in his whole world, and delighting in mankind. Now, there are a lot of people who read that and say, well, that's talking about Jesus. That's talking about the pre-existent Jesus as the wisdom of God. But there's a couple things in there that kind of make that impossible, because he uses phrases like, I was the first of his works. Before his deeds of old, I was appointed from eternity. It talks about wisdom being a created entity. If you go to John chapter 1, that kind of helps us understand. It can't be Jesus, because it says, through him all things were made, and apart from him nothing was made that has been made. So we're talking about wisdom as distinct and separate, being there at the time of creation, and also the means. I love the way, and I forgot to bring it with me, but a preacher by the name of Mike Hayes read that. He said he read that and thought about a whole image of ideas as he thought about wisdom being there at the time of creation, seeing the wonder, leaning over God's shoulder as an observer of all that was going on. To see God speak into existence the world, to raise the mountains out of the seas, to put the seas where they belong. And he went on to describe the fact that wisdom laughed and giggled when God made the platypus. And when God put the scent on the petal of the roses, to sit back in wisdom going, ah. And then when he put the stink in the skunk and the stink bug, saying, ooh. Being moved to awe as she watched God in his beautiful artistry, taking the brush and painting the vibrant colors on all the fish of the sea. She was there, delighting and worshiping and rejoicing. She was there when man took his first breath. And she was there worshiping in complete awe before God. Wisdom, creation, comes from God, God himself. But then he wraps it up with wisdom's conclusion. Verses 32 through 36. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Listen to my instruction and be wise. Do not ignore it. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. For whoever finds me finds life and receives favor from the Lord, but whoever fails to find me harms himself. All who hate me love death. There again, we come to that statement. Finding wisdom is usually not a matter of cannot, but most often a matter of will not. Why do I lack wisdom? Because I haven't asked for it, because I'm not looking for it, because I don't want God's wisdom or value God's wisdom. And it kind of helps us as we look at this verse, come back to a theme that we've seen come before, and we've mentioned it before. In Proverbs, this holds true. Our destiny will always be determined by our decision concerning wisdom's call. Our decision will always determine our destiny. The destiny of my marriage in great length will be determined by wisdom's instruction concerning marriage. My wisdom will determine the outcome of my financial dealings. My wisdom will determine the outcome of my eternity based on what wisdom is calling for me to do. Our destiny will be determined by our decision. Does not wisdom call? Does not wisdom speak? Raise her voice on the heights along the way. Wisdom is speaking even today. Wisdom is sitting in the pew right next to you. Wisdom will be in the car with you on the way home, even if you came by yourself. You will encounter wisdom at every turn, and wisdom will call for you to humble yourself before God. Wisdom will help you know what to do, when to do, and how. And wisdom's voice today and all days calls for us to turn to Jesus, to come to the one who's able to give life to our very soul. So the question we leave with this morning is a simple one. How will we respond to wisdom's call to us today? Father, thank you for your love. Thank you for your place. Thank you for your creation. Thank you for the imagery that Solomon presents to us, Father. Thank you for helping us to have a voice that helps us understand what wisdom is. Lord, help us to have ears that hear her calling and hearts that are willing to respond. Lord, today speak to us. Help us to know what it is we need to do now. In Jesus' name, amen.
In the morning.